MS.
A pleasant good evening. Welcome to the Apnu+Afctv live TV as we continue to give you the update as it relates to the national recount and the examination of the boxes from the National Recount Center. I'm joined by my colleague, Mr. Sherrod Duncan, and of course, at this hour, we continue to probe and examine the report from the CARICOM Secretariat as it relates to the observer team that was here in Guyana.
A very good evening, Chris, members of the public. As Chris said, we are combing through this report and really trying to make sense of how they come to the conclusions that they have come to based on just examining 18% of the ballot boxes. It seemed very strange that, you're not even quarter way through, but a mere 18% of the ballot boxes were examined by the CARICOM team based on their very own report. And then they've come to this conclusion.
Right. And of course, as we did mention to you, in terms of law, we're trying to figure out where in law such a word as reasonably credible exists. And based on all of the legal luminaries that we've spoken with, if they've never heard the term, it's either you're credible or not credible. But as we mentioned before, the CARICOM team has confirmed that they have only examined 423 of the 2,339 ballot boxes, which is a mere 18%. 18% out of 100%. And to arrive at a conclusion of it being reasonably credible, and again, the words, the term, it's not familiar in any legal language, reasonably credible. It is either it is credible or it is not.
Chris, to set the framework for this evening's update, CARICOM would have been invited by President David Grange on the 15th day of March, again coming out of some of the contentions emerging from the tabulation of SOPs previously. And so even when the team was invited, we know there was some litigation based on the fact that as the court agreed with the litigant, the Court of Appeal, that CARICOM could not supervise the process, they could only scrutinize the process. But CARICOM was at all times part and parcel of the national recount. It was the principal person who was on the ground, again, scrutinizing the national recount, and the gazetted order formed the foundation of the national recount. All of the stakeholders agreed to it, even were part of its construction. And again, CARICOM playing that scrutinizing role in the national recount. So it was surprising to see the CARICOM scrutinizing team, as we call them here, and as it is listed in the gazetted order, their report said they are an observer team. But it was surprising to see in that report them attacking the the order for the national recount. It is strange. Again, this is the order that brought CARICOM into the process to scrutinize. And the CARICOM scrutinizing team attacking the very order is the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. They have spoken in their report about something bizarre that happened. But this, I think, is bizarre. The CARICOM team attacking the gazetted order, a legal instrument that all the stakeholders locally agree to, and what facilitated their coming in the first place. Here's what part of their report said. From the outset, we recognize that the order called for an audit rather than a mere counting of ballots, and we do believe this was a colossal error on the part of the Commission. Nevertheless, they went on to be part of the process. Yeah. It is a colossal error on the part of the Commission. It's the strangest thing. It is the strangest thing. But they went on to say, again, from the outset, the team wishes to acknowledge that the exercise that we observed was not in fact a recount. Yet the title of the report is a recount report. They said it was not a recount. It was an audit of votes cast on March 2nd, 2020. And from the start, it was conceived as an audit, notwithstanding the statements of a national recount. So all of us running to the Artichoke Conference Center every day, scrutinizing the national recount, but little did we know, unwittingly, the CARICOM team has dismissed that. They say it was not a recount. It was an audit. This is their words, notwithstanding the statements on a national recount. This is bewildering. Again, attacking the recount order. They went on. I want to give you one other instance, Chris.
Sure.
They said, again, we are in another section of the report, we are of the firm opinion that the decisions to insist on an elaborate checklist for the recount. This is a checklist as to what's supposed to be in the ballot box. So as you open the ballot box, as part of the transparency and scrutinizing process, you check off the items that are supposed to be in the ballot box. Like, for instance, the statutory documents.
Correct.
CARICOM scrutinizing team, CARICOM observer team, they stated, we are of the firm opinion that the decision to insist on an elaborate checklist for the recount was a questionable one and indeed a bad decision.
While we continue to examine all of this, it takes us back to the utterances of Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Mr. Ralph Gonzalez. And of course, we did say to you then that the report can be and likely has been prejudiced by those utterances by the Prime Minister, Mr. Ralph Gonzalez. In that interview that we showed you on Saturday between Mr. Rickford Burke and Mr. Bert Francois of St. Vincent and the Grenadines Nice FM radio station, he spoke at length as it relates to Mr. Sylvanus King, who is the nominee by Mr. Ralph Gonzalez, who was part of the CARICOM observer team here in Guyana. We spoke to length, and we did mention to you many days ago that the utterances by Prime Minister Mr. Ralph Gonzalez, who is soon to be the chairman of CARICOM, has prejudiced the outcome of the report emanating from the CARICOM team. Here is that interview quickly, and we want you to quickly hear for yourself Mr. Bert Francois of St. Vincent and the Grenadines Nice FM radio, as he described or spoke on the character of Mr. Sylvanus King, who was one of the CARICOM observers nominated by Mr. Ralph Gonzalez, who was here in Guyana. Here is that piece.
So the Elections Commission is investigating all of these allegations in the presence of a CARICOM team, one of whom was nominated by Dr. Gonzalez.
And I think that's the gentleman King, right? That's all?
Yes.
And his credibility, I could say beyond a shadow of doubt, his credibility is none. He has no credibility. That I could tell you clearly. In St. Vincent's homeland, he has absolutely no credibility. He has been involved in the last election with irregularities that he knew and admit in the court that he knew was wrong. He couldn't recall a lot of his activities. He clearly say he can't recall. So really and truly, he's just a shell. He has absolutely no credibility, and I think that the people of Guyana need to know that. He has no credibility. I am in support. I know I go on the side of caution, but I fully support what you're saying, and the people of Guyana. Dr. Gonzalez has a history of that kind of utterances that is ill-timed, out of line, and bordering interference in the internal affairs of other country. Recently, some utterances from Guyana in terms of what took place in Grenada that people interpret as such.
So the Elections Commission is investigating all of these allegations in the presence of a CARICOM team, one of whom was nominated by Dr. Gonzalez.
And I think that's the gentleman King, right? That's all?
Yes.
And his credibility, I could say beyond a shadow of doubt, his credibility is none. He has no credibility. That I could tell you clearly. In St. Vincent's homeland, he has absolutely no credibility. He has been involved in the last election with irregularities that he knew and admit in the court that he knew was wrong. He couldn't recall a lot of his activities. He clearly say he can't recall. So really and truly, he's just a shell. He has absolutely no credibility, and I think that the people of Guyana need to know that. He has no credibility. I am in support. I know I go on the side of caution, but I fully support what you're saying, and the people of Guyana. Dr. Gonsalves has a history of that kind of utterances that is ill-timed, out of line, and bordering interference in the internal affairs of other country. Recently, some utterances from Guyana in terms of what took place in Grenada that people interpret as such.
So the Elections Commission is investigating all of these allegations in the presence of a CARICOM team, one of whom was nominated by Dr. Gonzalez.
And I think that's the gentleman king, right? That's all?
Yes.
And his credibility, I could say beyond a shadow of doubt, his credibility is none. He has no credibility. That I could tell you clearly. In St. Vincent's homeland, he has absolutely no credibility. He has been involved in the last election with irregularities that he knew and admit in the court that he knew was wrong. He couldn't recall a lot of his activities. He clearly say he can't recall. So really and truly, he's just a shell. He has absolutely no credibility, and I think that the people of Guyana need to know that he has no credibility. I am in support. I know I go on the side of caution, but I fully support what you're saying, and the people of Guyana. Dr. Gonsalves has a history of that kind of utterances that is ill-timed, out of line, and bordering interference in the internal affairs of other country. Recently, some utterances from Guyana in terms of what took place in Grenada that people interpret as such.
So the Elections Commission is investigating all of these allegations in the presence of a CARICOM team, one of whom was nominated by Dr. Gonzalez.
And I think that's the gentleman king, right? That's all?
So the Elections Commission is investigating all of these allegations in the presence of a CARICOM team, one of whom was nominated by Dr. Gonzalez.
And I think that's the gentleman king, right? That's all?
Yes.
And his credibility, I could...
Welcome back. That was, of course, the interview
Gentleman
between
King.
Mr. Rickford Burke and Bert Francois of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. That is the radio station Nice FM. And of course, in the interview there, you heard Mr. Rickford Burke made mention on the utterances by Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves. And then, of course, the radio host went in to speak about the character of Mr. Sylvanus King, who was one of those CARICOM observers who was in Guyana. And you heard there for yourself, he mentioned as it relates to King, that the gentleman has no credibility, none whatsoever. He's part of a current ongoing court matter as it relates to electoral fraud that brought Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves into power as Prime Minister there in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We did mention to you since last week Thursday, when those utterances by Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves, that his statement, the fact that he is a sitting Prime Minister, the fact that he nominated Mr. Sylvanus King, the fact that Ralph Gonsalves is the incoming chairman of CARICOM, it would have prejudiced the report emanating from CARICOM. But even notwithstanding that or those utterances by Ralph Gonsalves, the report from CARICOM confirms or mirrors that of the report from the Chief Elections Officer, Mr. Keith Lowenfield. In the CARICOM report, they confirm that dead people vote, but persons who died on elections day, persons voted in their place. Persons who migrated, persons voted in their place. Series of missing documentations, oaths of identity, poll books, official list of electors, and the list goes on. So the CARICOM report, notwithstanding the utterances by Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves that prejudiced the report, but the report mirrors that of the CEO's report, Mr. Keith Lowenfield, and confirmed in the findings that the CEO has mentioned.
And even Chris called for an investigation,
Correct.
for instance, for the missing documents and so forth.
That's correct. That's correct. So quickly again, we want to share with you these numbers. We want to leave these numbers with you so that you will understand exactly where we are as it relates to the CARICOM report. And then, of course, we will bring you Anil Nandalal, former Attorney General, when he spoke as it relates to the report from CARICOM. We're going to bring that clip to you in just a few minutes. But quickly, in terms of the numbers, the CARICOM Observer Team examined only 423 ballot boxes out of a total of 2,339. Now, we have summarized in terms of a margin of error, which will tell you that of the total amount of ballot box in a specific region, the CARICOM team would have had to at least examine X amount. Let me take you through those numbers quickly. Region 1 had a total of 99 ballot boxes. For the margin of error, the CARICOM team would have had to examine at least 79 of those ballot boxes. Instead, the CARICOM team only examined 12 or 6% in Region 1. Region 2, 135 ballot boxes. The margin of error, CARICOM should have examined at least 101. They only examined 26 or 6%. Region 3, 355 ballot boxes. The CARICOM team should have examined at least 185. They've only examined 76 or 18%. Region 4, the largest electoral district with 879 ballot boxes, the CARICOM team should have examined at least 268. They've only examined 157 or 37%. Region 5, 158. The CARICOM team should have examined at least 133. They've only examined 23 or 3%. Region 6, 378 ballot boxes. The CARICOM team should have examined at least 191. They've only examined 60 or 14%. Region 7, 82 ballot boxes. The CARICOM team should have examined at least 68. They've only examined 22 or 5%. Region 8, 55 ballot boxes. The CARICOM team should have examined at least 49. They've only examined 5 or 1%. Region 9, 73 ballot boxes. The CARICOM team should have examined at least 62, but they've only examined 18 or 6%. Region 10, 125 ballot boxes. The CARICOM team should have examined at least 95. They've only examined 24 or 3%. For a total of 423 ballot boxes out of 2,339 or 18%.
Correct.
That is it, 18% out of 100%. That is it. That is the amount that the CARICOM team examined, and you cannot really get in-depth analysis based on that amount of boxes.
Again, Chris, it's like a teacher giving students questions for an exam. The teacher examines 18% of the questions, 18% of the responses to the questions, and gives an A grade.
Yeah.
You give questions for an exam, 18% of the questions, the responses are examined, and you say, take an A.
Take an A. I mean, it's like, you know, the fact that this is coming from CARICOM, in which you have the CXC, the examinations. I wonder if by chance those students who are writing CXC, if they get 18% out of 100%, that means they get an A grade.
Yep. But Chris, in addition to all that you have stated, I have noticed a note in this report that there seems to be a fixation on Region 4 for whatever reason. I thought that the CARICOM recount team were coming with a clean slate approach, and they were taking their ballot boxes as they found them without any preconceived notion.
That's correct.
Of what went on in any particular ballot box, and let the narrative coming out of the ballot boxes speak for themselves. But again, the CARICOM team seemed to have a fixation on Region 4, and it is why, as you mentioned there, the majority of the ballots that the ballot boxes that they would have scrutinized came from Region 4.
Yeah.
And they have said it in their report from the onset that they would have only looked at these small amount of ballot boxes, and they also express the reason why they did. I'm trying to find the notation here. Go right ahead, Chris.
All right, no, but quickly, actually, what I wanted to do now, so the CARICOM report was one that all and sundry was awaiting to see the contents therein. But of course, as we mentioned, the fact that this is only speaking about 423 boxes is it's literally, it's dry, it's light, it's of no weight. But not strangely, we wanted to bring you a perspective from Anil Nandalal, former Attorney General, as it relates to the CARICOM report, and not the APNU AFC saying this, but we want you to hear what Anil Nandalal said as it relates to the CARICOM report having any weight.
His high regard
yes.
CARICOM report.
Here is Anil Nandalal on this report.
Once that is examined, you will come to the conclusion that it does not provide for GCOM to await any order, any report from CARICOM. You will know that GCOM crafted that order, and then it did not have that in it. That is absent. Then GCOM did an addendum at which there was a full meeting and deliberation, and were it to be included, GCOM was free at the stage of the addendum to amend the order to include the incorporation of a report from the CARICOM team. GCOM chose not to do so. So I cannot imagine that GCOM would want to await some report from CARICOM when the order doesn't provide. The order speaks very clearly and in mandatory fashion to the process by which GCOM is to conclude this exercise. And nowhere in that procedure is there a provision for CARICOM report to form part of the process ante the declaration. Perhaps at some stage, post the declaration, GCOM can have the CARICOM report, but speaking based upon the literal and clear language of the order, the order does not permit and does not allow GCOM to await any such report from CARICOM.
All right, so there's Anil Nandalal as it relates to this CARICOM report. In other words, he's saying, chow this. This is of no value to GCOM. No part in the order has anything that states that GCOM has to await the CARICOM report. Anil Nandalal has said that perhaps GCOM could look at this report post-declaration.
Yeah.
So Anil is essentially saying that the CARICOM report has no bearing on the declaration from GCOM.
Correct.
Sharon?
Chris, I wanna give the viewers that clip one more time. It is so important because again, today we see a big fuss about the report from the PPP, but this was Anil Nandalal just a couple of days ago.
That's right.
Could we get it one more time?
That is examined, you will come to the conclusion that it does not provide for GCOM to await any order, any report from CARICOM. You will know that GCOM crafted that order, and then it did not have that in it. That is absent. Then GCOM did an addendum at which there was a full meeting and deliberation, and were it to be included, GCOM was free at the stage of the addendum to amend the order to include the incorporation of a report from the CARICOM team. GCOM chose not to do so. So I cannot imagine that GCOM would want to await some report from CARICOM when the order doesn't provide. The order speaks very clearly and in mandatory fashion to the process by which GCOM is to conclude this exercise. And nowhere in that procedure is there a provision for CARICOM report to form part of the process ante the declaration. Perhaps at some stage, post the declaration, GCOM can have the CARICOM report, but speaking based upon the literal and clear language of the order, the order does not permit and does not allow GCOM to await any such report from CARICOM.
So there you have it again.
Yeah.
Anil Nandalal is
Yeah.
saying that this CARICOM report, as you heard him there,
Yeah.
this
People don't have
CARICOM
to wait
report.
in any report.
Exactly.
Not in any order.
Exactly.
The order doesn't provide for the report.
That's right. A GCOM could perhaps look at the CARICOM report post-declaration.
Yes.
So Anil is saying that this is
It has
worthless.
no value.
So for this, we could just take us and throw this over your shoulder, man.
Yeah, it's worthless.
Anil,
We don't need a report.
You don't need that.
The order does not provide for
Exactly.
a report. What report? We don't need any report.
So you heard it there, beer mix up, confusion,
Yeah.
cook up rice with little
Anil versus
dapuri,
Anil.
chicken and chow mein and mix.
Anil versus Anil.
Anil versus, that's correct. Anil versus Anil. I think Anil's been versus Anil on a large scale.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what you heard in there, ladies and gentlemen, Anil Nandalal, former Attorney General, has said that the GCOM report has absolutely no bearing
The
the CARICOM report has absolutely no bearing on GCOM's declaration. And as he said there, GCOM could perhaps, at post-declaration, look at the CARICOM report that is
basis.
there. Anil said it.
basis.
So we want to take you quickly to our guests tonight. We have Professor Ganesh Maipal, Mr. John Adams, Mr. Ryan Cleon Belgrave, who are going to be joining the discourse tonight. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. Good evening.
All right, so essentially for the past few hours, all and sundry Guyanese were looking into the examination of the report. They were examining the report from CARICOM. We're trying to get your perspectives as it relates to that report. Perhaps we could start off with Professor Ganesh, Maipal.
Good night, Chris. Good night, Sherrod. Good night to your listeners and viewers. First of all, I don't like this thing about professor. I don't want people to say that I don't have the necessary qualification. I don't want to be categorized.
I hear you.
Like
And
a certain person.
they may link that the fact that you're from Region 3 as well.
All right. Well, I guess everybody would have seen the CARICOM report, and the CARICOM report really has 132 pages. So I doubt whether anybody would have really and truly read all 132 pages thus far. I have read the executive summary, and from the executive summary, well, first of all, I should say thanks to CARICOM for their input.
Yes.
I mean, we did ask CARICOM to come, and they did, and they produced their report. However, there are a couple of things that I've noticed in the report, and the first is they agreed with the findings of the Chief Elections Officer, and that must be noted. They have accepted that there were anomalies, irregularities, abnormalities, and basically fraud.
Yes.
They have accepted that, and I believe that vindicates the APNU AFC position that there were electoral fraud committed in elections 2020, and that is the first point that we should note. They have, however, went on to state that the actual count of the vote was indeed transparent. That's numbered on page 2, in the second paragraph of page 2, the executive summary. Now, the APNU AFC, we have not disputed that the actual one for me and one for you was indeed a transparent process at the recount exercise, because everybody who sat in those stations, they will recall that when you open the PE7, which is the votes that are cast for each list of candidates, you took out the ballot paper and you would put the UV light on them, then you will put them under the camera and it will project on the big screen. So you would see that. That was very transparent. The issue, however, is how is it that those votes got into the ballot box? How is it that those votes were actually put there? And that is why it was absolutely necessary for us to reconcile the documents that are found in the ballot box. because in order for a vote to be put in the ballot box, the first thing is the person or the voter's name had to be on the official list of electors. And once you find the name on the official list of electors, then you will proceed onwards. If they come without an identification card, there is a process that you have to follow. And that is, you have to examine the registration record or the folio, and you question them on that registration record or folio so that they can verify that they are indeed who they say they are. And after that, you have to give them a oath of identity, which they would have to sign to before they receive the ballot paper. And even before they receive the ballot paper, you have to write on the counterfoil the serial number that is attached to their names. We have had cases where all of these cannot be verified. And there are 47 boxes that are yet to fulfill that requirement, which is to validate that vote that we saw clearly being projected on the screen. So when I read this report, what I've noticed also is that the CARICOM team, they had a different meaning to the word recount. They were under the impression that the word recount simply means counting one for me and one for you. But the gazetted order spelled out this recount to mean that you do a reconciliation of what is in the box before you can definitively pronounce on the credibility of the vote that is found in the box. And it is quite evident that credibility, that word credibility or credible vote, is nowhere close to elections 2020. And that must be noted. Unfortunately, further in the report, there is a position where I have noticed that only 18% of the ballots or the ballot boxes were actually observed by the CARICOM team. The unfortunate thing about that is that every region has their own dynamics, and every community, we can go further down to say that every community has their own dynamics. So to draw a conclusion from just 18%, it's a little far-fetched, and it is unfortunate that they did not observe more. And had they, to me, observed more, then I believe that the weight of their report would have been of greater importance. I, for example, Ganesh Mahipal, I sat in Station 5, everybody heard that before, and for 33 days we examined on an average 5 boxes per day. That means that I would have examined 165 boxes from region number 3, region number 10, and part of region number 4. And what the CARICOM person was not present for all of the observations that we would have made for these boxes, especially the boxes on the lower East Coast. And I believe my brother John Adams, who's on air with me, will agree that what we found on the East Coast of Demerara, it is only a little reflected here in the CARICOM report. And it could be because, as I would have said, they were not present for most of the time during that aspect of the recount. And because every area is different and every area has their own dynamics, you cannot conclusively say that 18% gives a fair understanding of what really took place on Elections Day or March 2nd, 2020.
Yes.
Guyanese, I think, are smart enough to understand that 18 out of 100 is fail.
Correct.
18 out of 100 does not even categorize you to be promoted in any aspect, even if you are a part of the No Child Left Behind policy. You had to have achieved a score that is relatively good enough to say that you can go on and take into consideration what is written.
Yes.
So I have a fundamental problem agreeing to some extent, agreeing with an 18% conclusion with a 132-page document. Nonetheless, we have to recognize that our elections, our regional and general elections, it is not only to determine the presidency of our country, but it also decides on the parliamentary seats. Every region has geographic representation, and every vote is important. Credible votes are important because if you don't have credible votes in the regions, in the geographic locations, then you are going to distort the entire calculation that is going to give the geographic seats in parliament. And further than that, you have the regional democratic councils that are elected by way of regional representation through the votes. So it is unfortunate that such a small amount of numbers in terms of boxes were examined for each region, and it has led me to conclude that the report that is submitted before us here, and which we are examining totally, can give any level of validity. The most I can accept and the most I can agree with is that I'm happy to say that the CARICOM team recognized with us, with the APNU AFC, that there were electoral fraud in elections 2020.
Excellent. We'll bring in Mr. Ryan Belgrave and your perspective on the CARICOM report, having worked in the workstations as well.
All right. Good night, Chris, Sherrod, and other members of the panel. Thanks for having me. As Apnu stated, and just an amendment to what he said, it's actually 152 and not 32. I would not have had an opportunity to go through this report in its entirety. And I would challenge those persons that are out there and thwarting that they would have read the CARICOM's report and they know exactly what the report intended to, or the message the report intended to convey. So let the nation know if they had read the report in its entirety, because we're hearing all sorts of comments about what the CARICOM team meant and all of that. I can't speak to the fact that the report referenced the order that was gazetted as to how the recount should be conducted. And at some point, the team recognized, even before the start of the recount, that it was not merely a count of the ballots found in the P7, but an audit of the only the ballot box, but the process in its entirety. And we did know for sure that the team was not able to witness the entire count. So their report basically is limited as it relates to all of the irregularities or the anomalies that were discovered. I would have witnessed the team a few times as I worked in workstation 10. We were counting District 4 votes. And of course, they were present and they heard the irregularities as they unfolded. I can point to when we were at on the East Bank at Diamond School, and we had two separate polling stations. For those persons that would have worked on elections day before and know compositions of polling stations, even if you have about 10 polling stations in the state school, you know that it is physically impossible for a number of voters lists to migrate from one box and end up in another box, and the same list from that box to end up in another. So we would have witnessed anomalies like that from very early in the counting process. I think this was within the first week we would have seen this, and there was no single or no good explanation that could have explained why all of the lists belonging to one polling station were found in another box. But surprisingly, a large number of voters, majority of whom voted for the People's Progressive Party Civic, would have voted on that at that station on the day, with no reports reaching the Ghana Elections Commission, the RO or the DRO's office, to state that they would have uncovered anomalies in the list. And we would have seen throughout this process the anomalies that were uncovered in District 4 specifically. I know that the agents for the PPP and the other small parties that were aligned with the PPP throughout the recount, they would usually present themselves whenever certain boxes would have come into the station, because they already knew the outcome that they were looking for in those boxes. And strange enough, all of those boxes that they made a lot of noise, because I'm happy that the audio would have been recorded so that persons can go back for themselves and listen to the presentation of the PPP and those small parties. All of the boxes that they made a lot of noise about were boxes that came, and the integrity of those boxes were compromised to some extent, where you would have had broken seals,
Right.
you would have had missing documents or something, or one thing or the other took place. So we have this situation where, again, the CARICOM report, for me, did not truly reflect everything that happened. Maybe if we would have written on all of the anomalies and all of the things that were uncovered, it may have 500-page report or so. So I will rest there for now, because the professor would have said most of what needed to be said, and afford Mr. Adams to make his contribution to this point.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Belgrave. Mr. Adams?
Good night, Chris and team. First of all, I would want to thank the CARICOM Observer team for the report. And I wish them a safe travel to their respective places of abode. I would not be like Ganesh to twin the CARICOM's report and the CEO's report. But I looked directly at CARICOM. I, like the others, didn't get a chance to read the report in its entirety. But I recognize that CARICOM, the report spoke to 18% of the boxes. And like Ganesh said, you cannot give a definitive or make a conclusion on only looking at 18% of the boxes. And if I'm to use Mrs. Jordan's words, we only looked at a splattering of the boxes. And I would therefore conclude that the sampling of the ballot boxes by CARICOM did not meet the statistical robustness. For example, in Region 3, where there were 355 ballot boxes, only 76 of those boxes were the sample the CARICOM observer looked at. So I'm happy that they did agree in some part of the report that there was fraud. And to use Anil's words, fraud is fraud. And in any class, if a student of math is only 18% of the mark, of the total 100%, that child is bound to fail. That child would not be promoted. A child would have only been promoted with 18% under the PPP reign when you had no child left behind. So, although CARICOM came, they looked just for, as everyone is saying, because we knew what were in the boxes. We knew at box 332212A, there were how many votes for each party in that box. CARICOM did not take into consideration the observation report. And that is what is important.
Yes.
Because we knew how many votes were there, but it has to deal with the anomaly. And when we get to the CEO's report, there is where we are going to see how he looked at the contents of each box. But along with each box, there were anomalies. And the anomalies proved to us that they were largely there was an electoral fraud on election day. So no, Ganesh must not take CARICOM's report as the ends to the means. This is only a part of the process, a four-pronged process. And we are now getting to the second round of that process. So we must not bow our heads. And the PPP, they are celebrating because they recognize that CARICOM is saying just what they said, that they have whatever in those boxes. They did not look at all at the anomaly. And we can show from the reports we have that most of the anomalies were in the PV strong areas where the rigging took place. So I rest my case there on CARICOM. I thank them again for the report, but it is not the end.
That's good.
Thank you.
Chris, with your permission, Sharon, Chris, with your permission,
Sure.
imagine they examined 18% of the ballot boxes. 18% out of 100, they examined 18%, and they recommended in their report a couple of recommendations that must be mentioned. The first that I want to mention is that after they would have examined just 18% of the ballot boxes, they recommended that there is need for total re-registration of all voters
Yeah, that
in
was
Guyana.
interesting. Yeah, that was pretty
So after
interesting.
18%, just 18%,
Yeah.
they concluded that there is need for house-to-house registration.
And total overhaul of
After 18%
Yes.
of observation from their part in terms of ballot boxes, they recommended that there is a strong need for investigation into the missing documents. They recommended after 18%
Yes.
that a code of conduct governing the behavior of party agents should be established. After 18%, they recommended that greater emphasis on voter education, especially with regards to the handling of ballot papers by presiding officers and citizens. After 18%, they recommended that there must be a total overhaul of the Guyana Elections Commission. After 18%, they recommended that a political audit of GCOM is necessary, both the commission and its administrative arm. Now, if they only examined 18% of the ballot boxes and derived these very conclusions or recommendations that we have been uttering from day one since January of 2020 or even before that, we were calling for house-to-house registration. We were calling for stringent measures to be put in place. We were asking for all of these recommendations. And after 18% that CARICOM examined, they have drawn the same conclusion. Can you imagine if they would have examined 25%, 50%, or 75% of the ballot boxes? We would not have had papers to print their report then.
Correct. That's correct.
And
No,
Dennis,
it is also important to note that the CARICOM team had the opportunity in the afternoon to sit in the tabulation center, and they would have been privy to the observation reports of the station. So even though they would have articulated that they examined 18% of the vote, they should have indicated that they are very much, I am certain that they are aware of issues raised in other stations that they were not physically present in because they were brought out in the observation report.
And further to that, they only heard of the allegations that were made pertaining to migration and debt. There is the second part of that, which was the confirmation that indeed persons who migrated and were not in the country on or before March 2nd did have a vote in the box, which is astronomically strange. And more so, dead people had a vote in the box. So they only heard that, but they're not part of the process that would have confirmed that these anomalies, these fraud, indeed exist. And they would have just put together what they observed after observing 18%. And I keep saying, had they observed more, there would not have been enough type sheet for us to print their report.
Excellent, excellent. Any final?
No.
All right, gentlemen, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much, Mr. Ryan Belgrave, Mr. John Adams, and Mr. Ganesh Mahipal.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having us.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having us.
And Chris, that is why I said, based on that 18% of the ballot boxes that were examined, you understand why the CARICOM's report is so deficient in so many regards. There is no emphasis on the anomalies and occurrences and deficiencies because they did not focus on that. And they said it. They said they felt that it was wrong to do an audit when a recount was what was required, ballot by ballot. This audit, they were against this idea of an audit, and they kept repeating that in the report. But it's important to note that the commission, the Elections Commission, had 4 persons, 4 of their staff, commission staff, at every workstation.
Correct.
As against the 3
Agents? Or the CARICOM team members?
CARICOM scrutinizing team who would have restricted themselves to an extent, because here in their report they have said an early decision was therefore taken that the team would realize greater results by concentrating their efforts in Region 4 and visit other stations, Region 1 through 3, these being the Region 4 districts the recount began. And so they restricted themselves, again, because they didn't have the numbers, one. But I understand now also fully well why the Chief Elections Officer's report is of such breadth and depth.
Correct.
Even though it's not as long, strangely, as the CARICOM team's report, because he had more staff on the ground, picking up more information, and so was able to make a more informed decision. And as Ganesh rightfully said, while the CARICOM team only saw and heard the allegations that were made, those allegations were confirmed about these persons who would have died, and yet somebody cast a vote in their stead, because the information was forwarded to the General Registrar's office, who said yes, that has substance to it. The information concerning those persons who would have been out of the jurisdiction on election day, yet somebody cast a vote in their stead. That information was forwarded to the Commissioner of Police, who is head of the immigration services locally. He said yes, those allegations have substance with as well. And so they did not focus on that at all in their report. And again, it wasn't the Chief Elections Officer who pursued those investigations. It was the chairman of the commission, Justice Collins Singh, who wrote to the to the Commissioner of Police, requesting him to look into these allegations, which bore fruit ultimately.
Exactly. All right, so we continue to examine the report emanating from the CARICOM observer team
18% report.
that was in Guyana. Of course, it did mention that they have only examined 423 out of the 2,339 ballot boxes, some 18% out of 100% of the examination. Of course,
because another way I saw it, again, this 18% of the ballot boxes that were scrutinized, I saw it as, we have this pandemic happening locally and persons are being tested. And so you test 18 persons and you say, oh, they just have aches and pains. It's not COVID related. They have aches and pains. So again, it's COVID free. Yeah. You only test 18 persons.
80 persons.
Yeah.
Indeed.
We're COVID free.
Indeed. You heard earlier that piece that we played with you with attorney at law, Mr. Anil Nandalal, former Attorney General, where he sought to state that the CARICOM report, GCOM, does not have to insert or extract or wait on the CARICOM report to make any pronouncement. In fact, Mr. Anil Nandalal went as far as saying that perhaps GCOM could examine the CARICOM report post declaration. Let's just play quickly that piece for you. We'll come back and we'll give you the numbers before we leave this evening.
You will come to the conclusion that it does not provide for GCOM to await any order. Once that is examined, you will come to the conclusion that it does not provide for GCOM to await any order, any report from CARICOM. you will know that GCOM crafted that order, and then it did not have that in it. That is absent. Then GCOM did an addendum at which there was a full meeting and deliberation, and were it to be included, GCOM was free at the stage of the addendum to amend the order to include the incorporation of a report from the CARICOM team. GCOM chose not to do so. So I cannot imagine that GCOM would want to await some report from CARICOM when the order doesn't provide. The order speaks very clearly and in mandatory fashion to the process by which GCOM is to conclude this exercise. And nowhere in that procedure is there a provision for CARICOM report to form part of the process ante the declaration. Perhaps at some stage, post the declaration, GCOM can have the CARICOM report, but speaking based upon the literal and clear language of the order, the order does not permit and does not allow GCOM to await any such report from CARICOM.
Does not have to wait for any report from CARICOM, says Anil Nandalal, former Attorney General.
Who needs a report?
Anil on Anil once again,
Who needs a
and he
report?
says essentially that nothing that is contained herein, GCOM has to insert anything from this
catered
here.
for in the
Exactly.
gazetted order.
It wasn't catered for.
Wasn't catered for.
Right, GCOM could sit down, post declaration, and then look at this. This is not important.
wasn't
Have you
catered
heard
for.
it there? Anil on Anil. But just quickly, let me go through the numbers.
Yeah.
And we have a very disturbing, I repeat, a very disturbing video to bring to you immediately after this. And of course, we do advise that viewers' discretion is advised for this video that we will play in just a few minutes. All right, so quickly again, the CARICOM Observer team that was in Ghana for the past 30-odd days did an analysis or inspection of only 423 of the 2,339 ballot boxes, or 18%. 18% out of 100%. And based on their examination, there is a margin of error, which simply says in a particular region, if you have this amount of ballot boxes, you would need to examine at least this amount. And we have that breakdown for you, and we have the percentage, and we will share with you now. Region 1 had a total of 99 ballot boxes. Based on the margin of error, the CARICOM team would have had to examine at least 79 of the boxes. The CARICOM team only examined 12. In Region 2, with 135 ballot boxes, the margin of error puts it at 101 boxes that the CARICOM team would have had to examine. The CARICOM team only examined 26, or 6%. Region 3, 355 ballot boxes. The CARICOM team would have had to examine at least 185. They've only examined 76, or 18%. Region 4, the largest electoral district with 879 boxes, the CARICOM team would have had to examine at least 268. They've only examined 157, or 37%. Region 5, 158 ballot boxes. The CARICOM team would have had to examine at least 133. They've only examined 23, or 3%. Region 6, 378 ballot boxes. The CARICOM team would have had to examine at least 191. They've only examined 60, or 14%. Region 7, 82 ballot boxes. The team would have had to examine at least 68. They've only examined 22, or 5%. Region 8, 55 ballot boxes to be examined. The team would have had to examine at least 49. They've only examined 5, or 1%. Region 9, 73 ballot boxes. The CARICOM team would have had to examine at least 62 boxes. They've only examined 18 or 6%. Region 10 with 125 ballot boxes. The CARICOM team would have had to examine at least 95 boxes. They've only examined 24 or 3%.
Yep.
For a total of 423 out of 2,339 boxes, or 18% out of 100%. That is all the CARICOM team examined, but it's noteworthy to mention in the CARICOM report, the report mirrors that to some extent. The report from the Chief Elections Officer, Mr. Keith Lowenfield. In this report, it is confirmed that persons who died before March the 2nd, persons cast a vote in their name. Persons who migrated before March the 2nd, persons cast a vote in their name. Missing documentation, missing poll books, missing certificates of employment, missing oaths of identity. All of that is captured in the CARICOM report, which mirrors that, conforms or brings validity or confirmation or legitimation or legitimize the CEO's report that was presented on Saturday. It is all captured here. But of course, this report is limited because it only examined 18% of the boxes. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we did mention to you earlier, there is a video that we would want to share with you at this time, a very disturbing video. We do ask for your discretion with the contents that will be played. And then we'll come back and talk to you about this video.
The joke with Uncle Ruckus. When he said you want to cast demon out of black people, give him a book for read. Show them the books and say, read! He's like, yes, sir. So when black people see paperwork, this guy, like, oh God, there's a very important thing. This important thing is documents. How freak? What will happen if my eyes fall upon them? Yes, sir. They don't even read the Bible. They gotta get past the brown. Yes, sir. For read the Bible for them. They gotta get Benny Hinn to read the Bible for them and explain it. They're frightened to put their eyes in the Bible. Hence one eyes burn. Just reading the word of God. Yes. They don't want to be possessed by knowledge. It is confusing. It could become frustrating. Yes. So they say, Pastor, you tell me. Pastor said, come to church and out your party. Sit up on the front seat and feel free. Pastor said, eat grass. It happened. I ain't no joke. They ain't got nothing about white talk is a joke. Yes, I might come over like a joke. And next pastor giving them semen in the mouth. Here, I tell him it's from the Holy Ghost. They should have named me the Holy Ghost Buster. So, in clarifying, the documents that you see here, what happened now? You never heard the joke with Uncle Ruckus? When he said you want to cast demon out of black people, give him a book for read. Show them the books and say, read! He's like, yes, sir. So when black people see paperwork, this guy, like, oh God, there's a very important thing. This important thing is documents. How freak? What will happen if my eyes fall upon them? Yes, sir. They don't even read the Bible. They gotta get past the brown. Yes, sir. For read the Bible for them. They gotta get Benny Hinn to read the Bible for them and explain it. They're frightened to put their eyes in the Bible. Hence one eyes burn. Just reading the word of God. Yes. They don't want to be possessed by knowledge. It is confusing. It could become frustrating. Yes. So they say, Pastor, you tell me. Pastor said, come to church and out your party. Sit up on the front seat and feel free. Pastor said, eat grass. It happened. I ain't no joke. They ain't got nothing about white talk is a joke. Yes, I might come over like a joke. And next pastor giving them semen in the mouth. Here, I tell him it's from the Holy Ghost. They should have named me the Holy Ghost Buster. So, in clarifying, the documents that you see here, Up now. You never hear the joke with Uncle Ruckus? When he said you want to cast demon out of black people, give them a book for read. Show them the books outside. Read! He's like, yes, sir. So when black people see people and this guy, like, oh God, there's a very important thing. This important thing is documents.
Folks, welcome back. That is the quote-unquote journalist known as the Guyanese critic. And you would have heard that statement coming out of the critic, Guyanese critic, attacking Afro-Guyanese as people who can't read, attacking religion, attacking Christianity, mimicking some people or persons, I don't know. But you can judge for yourself. And I think that it is past time that persons are held accountable for these racial remarks. Quite recently, you have had Anil Nandalal visit the Commissioner of Police and said that he has a list that he's submitting of persons who are dividing this country on social media and hurling racial epithets and slogans and so on locally. Now, if this is not a prime candidate to head that list, I don't know who else is. Folks, this is very, very serious. It is egregious. It is unacceptable. And what you can do is really and truly just stop viewing critic. It's as simple as that. If you share these views of critic, then you are in a dark place that he's in clearly. And what you can do also is unfollow critic. You can unfollow his page. You can report his page to Facebook. This has no excuse. It has no, and that is what we're seeing. People go off on this racial tirade, and then they come back and say, "Oh, I had a few beers. Oh, I was stressed." And critic needs help. It is clear. We have seen too many times when he has pushed himself over the edge. And I wouldn't even doubt that critic has some mental health issues. Very seriously, he needs help. And you have to decide what you do with your time on social media. But critic is a page that needs reporting, because this kind of nonsense has to become unpalatable to all of us as Guyanese people at some point in time. There is so much that is allowed within the political arena and social arena in this country, but for somebody of the ilk of critic, who has the kind of influence that he can have on social media, to be spreading this bile and guile, it is unacceptable. And we invite you to, one, unfriend his page, and two, report his page to Facebook.
Yeah, I actually have no comments. I will refrain my comments at this time. But essentially, anyhow, let me just leave it like that. I mean, when you see comments like these on social media, and especially in light of what is happening across the world as it relates to the Black Lives Matter March, and those incidents in which you see playing out in the United States, and then to still have people here in Guyana that will take to social media, particularly those who have a large following, and spew statements of that sort.
Unfollow his page, unfriend his page. He must know that what he has done is egregious and unacceptable. Unfriend his page, unfollow his page. That there is unacceptable.
Yeah. In a nutshell, he had the CARICOM report, that document, and essentially he was saying, in a nutshell, that if you want to hide something from black people in Guyana, put it in paper. That is specifically what he was mentioning. He targeted the African or Guyanese of Afro descent on his program in that piece. And we look forward to seeing all and sundry who will condemn it. I will restrain my comments no further. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been our program tonight. On behalf of my colleague, Mr. Sherrod Duncan, our technical team, Mr. Ross and Mr. Arnold, we want to wish you a pleasant rest of your evening. And we invite you right back here tomorrow at 7:30, where our colleague, Mr. Randolph Critchlow, is going to lead us off for the day.
Yes,
and of course, we will be back and continue to bring you the information as it unfolds, as we continue to probe these reports from the CARICOM and the Chief Elections Officer. Until tomorrow, 7:30, my name is Christopher Jones. Have a pleasant rest of your evening. Goodbye for now.